Hello everyone, welcome to the 13th episode of Road to Super Bowl Season 3 2025 edition. As I guess you can see from this picture, this is going to be a bit of a gloomy episode covering Miami Dolphins. Kind of went with the team, how I feel about this team, and also unlucky number 13 overall. So as I'm starting to realize, doing this for a second year in a row, I feel like here between the 10th and 20th pick, we will probably have some recurring theme that will be just from two categories. One first category that we unfortunately are going to do back to back now after Dallas and its Dolphins, and those are the teams that I really struggle to see a huge future for, because I feel like with the decision they've made about their QB and the situation with how much they are paying that, I feel like they are stuck in some sort of purgatory, which means I don't think they will ever be too bad, so they would drop to those top picks. But also, I just don't see how they go more than one and done in the playoffs. So, unfortunately, back-to-back episodes with teams that are kind of stuck in this. Well, the second sort of these teams will be these ascending teams that, were just entering perhaps their prime. But we will see when we will start to talk about some of those teams. So today it's Miami Dolphins, is episode 13. How they got to this position that I really don't envy them. And this is also like one of my best takes last year, because I said Dolphins are cyclically screwed and nobody seeing that, it seems like. And year in, unfortunately, this take I feel like absolutely holds. So let's see how they get into this position. We start with the draft, and it's going to start very well, because I was wrong on Chubb Robinson. I did not see this upside, and I did not, know about Bradley Chubb's situation probably being much worse than expected. I knew that he's not expected to be there for start of the season, but the way that he missed the whole season was a bit of a shock. And add to that Jalen Phillips injury, and suddenly this room that you kind of have two great players in was very depleted, and Chubb Robinson was absolutely needed. And he had a slower start, but like since week 8-9, he really packed up. And if we just took his stats from like week 9 and transfer them to across the whole season, he would probably be in the defensive player or rookie defensive player of the year conversation. Though, next to Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, Jared Verse, it was always a tough competition. But Chop was astounding. He developed as a pass rusher to a degree that I did not expect from him to see year one. Really was. He always and you talk about Chubb Robinson as a prospect, he had nasty speedy first step, but not necessarily able to translate that into that much of a power that you can do that. But it seems like with Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips in the room, they shared some of the tricks with him, and it's looking rather nice for Chubb. Unfortunately, really bright spots kind of end there, because Patrick Paul, he felt like a reach. The only bright spot on this was they are finally realizing, well, our O-line was not great and it got depleted. Connor Williams out, Robert Hunt out. We need someone to play. Patrick Paul was always a developmental tackle, not a guy that you expect year one to be excellent. So it doesn't bother me that much that he didn't look like he belongs into NFL as of right now, but it's still not a great look. And they kind of didn't get much from the rest of the draft. I mean, Malik Washington was always a pickup that I was a huge fan of, and he looked solid, but not necessarily taking strides as you would hope, because this offense is built for his type. Storm Duck, undrafted pickup, very solid for UDFA guy, and We might see if he gets into rotation more often for next year. But it kind of says a lot that these are like two other guys that I'm mentioning, because the rest of them just did not get to play very much. Jalen Wright, Mo Kamara, Patrick McMorris, Taj Washington, really not much to speak in terms of contribution for these guys. So very underwhelming draft. Pretty much chop, and that's it in terms of like huge contributors. And when you consider that it's not like they didn't have draft picks, it's not like they did not treat this season like development, or they wanted to be great, right? And also, when you think about the quality that the 2024 draft had overall, you have to come out of this really disappointed. And good for them to get job. Like, okay, they were right, I was wrong, it seems like. But the rest of the draft so far, it looks bad. And with that being said, let's go from draft to actual roster. So we start with Tua, and with Tua it's always going to be hard conversation for me, because I'm a huge fan. He's one of the very few college players that even before I start to be really interested in college football, I tuned up college ball to watch. And I just struggle when I see him out there, and it always feels like he is one concussion away from ending his career, and hopefully nothing else in terms of his health overall. But I'm scared for him, and the fact that he got paid again for him, huge fan of that. Like, I get you are set up for life, I am stoked for you, but for this franchise, this just sets them behind, because Tua, even when healthy, I think the conversation is about him being around top 10 QB, which is really good. I'm not taking that away. But that's when you are healthy and when you are on the top of your game. This year, he wasn't. There was again another concussion, unfortunately, and like the fact that he's still diving headfirst, it's worries me, like makes me scared. And the second thing is, like, even when he was out there, he was not playing like a top 10 QB. Like, this year was much more of his floor, which is still like average QB, but that's exactly the type of QB I would not pay. Like, I would not pay Tua. I told it last year. I am still adamant on that take. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, Miami fans, would probably start to be more on this side of of the ball. And it's not like, again, I don't think that when you have good to great QB, you have to pay him. This is just my mantra. I feel like those QBs are exactly the reason you get stuck in purgatory if you are paying them top dollars. Again, if Tua would have 40 million a year, okay, like that's where I'm getting reasonable value for my bucks. But with 55 here, that's just one really great player that I'm missing from that roster. And not to mention, like, this is also only a part of like Tua's quality when you accompany the possibility of his injuries just stockpiling, and whether it's like not even his health, that's always like one part, but even like, don't you think that it has it like messes up with how you perform? It's like you should be more scared out there. Like, whenever I feel like you start to be scared, which I would not judge Tua at all after what he's been through. When you start to be scared, you are not playing on time, you are not making your progressions last, you are trying to let go of the ball quite sooner, which was the case this year. Like, Tua really didn't connect on a lot of deep balls, nor he did try them. Like, you might blame, like, the online wasn't as great, but it just was not Tua's peak by any definition. So to me, they've made a mistake, and And Tua is not going to be Desmond Ridder. Like, Tua is not going to be Daniel Jones. Like, I'm not comparing him to these type of players. But that's kind of worrying because I think like at his best, you have 8th best QB that has never won a playoff game, 8-7, and at his worst, he's like 20th best QB that you worry that any play could be his last, unfortunately. And that's not a player that you build your franchise on. Like, that's not a recipe for success in my books. On this type of money, again, 35, 40 millions, I am absolutely throwing that at Tua. He deserves that. 55, that's where I absolutely struggle. Tyler Huntley, journeyman, or not necessarily journeyman, like he spent a lot of time in Baltimore, but really nice backup QB, really a guy that I do expect to see for several years in the league is this really capable backup. He showed that he can play. It's not special, but he was able to run that offense to reasonable degree. You might be getting started for good and great news for the Dolphins. Where here is one, and the one is Devon A-Chain. From year one, he was dynamic as hell, but only like the sample size wasn't huge. Now it is, and he's still dynamic as hell. He was, I would say, the best utilized player on this like offensive roster. He definitely got his touches, and he was great with them. On a roster where you have Tyreek Hill, where you have Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert had really good 23 season. I would say Devon A-Chain was the guy that was the motor of this offense. Raheem Mostert unfortunately did not follow up on his like late career breakout in 2023. I'm like, is it the lack of touches? Is it injuries pile up? Is it the age? I might rewatch more closely some of his snaps, whether the important starter still holds. They don't think so. They let him go, which is something that I was not necessarily expecting, because it only frees up $3 million in terms of cap hit, and it's like not that he had like a huge cap hit for a season. Like $4 million for a player of his qualities. I mean, okay. I feel like this has much more reasoning when we want to get Jalen Wright involved in this offense, which like okay, they are not in great cap situation, so it makes a little bit of sense. But I mean, for $3 million a year, having Mostert on the roster, tough to say that that's not a value in my books. That being said, let's look at the wide receivers, and this was a disappointing year for Tyreek and Jalen. For Tyreek, the season kind of started in controversial fashion when he was late on first game because of some how to put it, attachment with police, and he just didn't look like Tyreek from his prime year, which he's just 1 year away from his probably best season. So that's like when I'm comparing guys to their prime, here's like his prime probably was like a year ago, which is crazy. But he just didn't look as fast as the old Tyreek. And it might be about a lot of things happening out there. Like he had several kids this year, some other altercations. So there is a possibility that this was a lot about stuffs off the field. But when I watched the tape, it just wasn't as dynamic as before. And the other thing is what he's done in week 18, where he refused to play in fourth quarter of a game where they still were technically in a playoff hunt, and kind of pretty much after 5 minutes after the game says, I'm done with this organization, I want out. For a guy that they sacrificed a lot, they probably adapted a lot in terms of there has been a lot of internal rules that he is not following, especially like with being on time for meetings. And it feels like he got too big for his bridges, as you say. And as of right now, like I'm not sure how his future looks like because I don't know. Maybe in his mind, 2026 Olympics, flag football. That's what is his kind of primary goal at this stage of his career. I'm not sure like how much football desire is actually left in him because I mean, if you really think about football, how do you go like, yeah, we are still in playoff hunt to I'm out, I want out, get me fucking out of here, I'm not playing. And like his cap hits are like insanely high. I would not be shocked if they were seeking a trade partner, but the question is like, what's the price? Really, one of the off-season storylines that I expected could heat up. Jalen Waddle, unfortunately, did not follow on what I would say clear or one of the best number twos in the league. He's still out there with them, but this was kind of slightly lackluster season for his standards. He had some uncharacteristic drops for him, and I was not like about to lower him, but it really felt like he might be, even knocking on those to eliteness when he was last year. After this year, there is still a long way to go. Malik, we talked about him. This is offense that should suit him. With two top guys not necessarily performing to their insanely high standards, there could have been some more going his way. He did not necessarily grab that opportunity and run away with it. Who did was Jonnu Smith. Somewhere in Pittsburgh, Arthur Smith is probably smiling, seeing Jonnu Smith playing as good as he is, and quite honestly looking better than Kyle Pitts in 2024. He was a revelation for this team, kind of like, do you even like want to call this like late career breakout? Like he is not 30 as of right now, but I'm really interested in how this is going to progress because he played like top 5-7 tight end in a conference, which is not something that we would expect out of him when he came here, and they have him on another year costing only 4.6 million in terms of cap hit, so he's going to be an insane value going forward. Behind other wide receivers, there was just really nothing to talk. Like this offense was always about Tyreek, about Jalen, about running backs. This year, Jonnu Smith kind of stepped up. Devon A-Chain really was the guy, while I would say Tyreek and Jalen Waddle slightly lackluster seasons. With that being said, let's check this offensive line. And what a fun it was, and what a pleasure it was to see Terron Armstead being healthy for almost the whole year. Man, oh man, this was a pleasure to watch. And it's like this guy, we know what he is. We know what he is when he can play. He is one of the top 7 tackles in the league, left tackles, which is really insane competition to be at. Like, it's pretty much like if you. I mean, there is so many great left tackles that it's kind of insane. But Terron Armstead really just looking like an absolute stud. Just please allow him to stay healthy because both Miami and Tua absolutely need that. On the other side, we saw a pretty much split between Austin Jackson and Kendall Lamb. In terms of Austin was playing till midway part of the season, and Kendall kind of took over later. Both of them were solid enough that you were not entering the game worrying about that side as much as you would expect, given Austin Jackson really up to this point was a huge disappointment for a first rounder. I'm not saying that he's still not like a bad player for where they drafted him, and I feel like they kind of did the same thing that Dallas did with Terrence Steele, kind of expecting him to make another leaps, and he did not necessarily thrived. He had slightly worse season than Terrence Steele, but like even when like they are really trying to thread the needle with these guys, like we are definitely overpaying him by this standards as they are right now. If he moves up like let's say one grade, then we are paying him right, and for him to be a value, he would have to leapfrog like two grades, like at least on my books. And how likely is that, man? So I feel like both of these contracts are very similar, very like questionable that, but they are both saved with those franchises actually not being as dumb as those contracts might suggest, because both of those contracts have quite a nice way out in case the leapfrog is not happening. So that's really where you stand on both, I think, Austin Jackson and Terrence Steele for Dolphins and Cowboys respectively. In terms of interior, it was always like a question mark who is even going to play there, because Robert Hunt gone, Connor Williams gone, and they went with Rojo, but not Rojo the running back, but Robert Jones the offensive guard, and Liam Eichenberg. How did those guys perform? Well, not great. Both of them are out of the contracts for upcoming year. Both of them went into this organization in 2021, but unlike with Eichenberg, whom they spent a high second round pick, Robert Jones was an undrafted free agent that arrived into this organization. Well, their careers in terms of quality output, I would say, are very similar, kind of unfortunately for the Dolphins, because Eichenberg is definitely a disappointment. Robert Jones for UDFA, it's a nice pickup, but not necessarily a guy that you can build offensive line or interior around. So they look like that exactly in these years, and like, do expect them to get any better? I don't really think so. Hey, guys, stop it. I don't necessarily think so. So they might be, again, looking out for guards on the market with these two, with a question of being back. Who definitely was a pleasant surprise was Aaron Brewer. This was always going to be a system that should suit him very well, and one of the almost like signings of the season for the Dolphins, because he is not like a huge specimen of a man in terms of this absolutely big body guy, but you can work around that with being a center, and in the system that is a lot about mobility, a lot about short, quick passes, not necessarily needing to hold 350-pound nose tackles for seconds. So Aaron Brewer, really exceptional year, real nice pickup, and they have him for another 2 years on a relatively cheap deal. So they definitely found something in him. In terms of backups, Isaiah Wynn was brought back on a 1-year contract. Yet another draft bust, I would say, for some teams, because like in this case, it's not that he was drafted by the Dolphins. He was originally drafted by the Patriots regime under Bill Belichick, 23rd overall, and he just did not pan out. We will see where he goes from now, but I think even good backup at this point of the time might be a little bit rich, though. Like, there is still a body frame to try to hide behind your running backs and your QB. So that was the Dolphins offense. One of the units that disappointed the most across the whole year, across the whole NFL. I did not see necessarily like super schemed up things that we've been kind of used to from Mike McDaniel in years past. We have not seen Tyreek Hill absolutely shredding defenses to apart. And where do you go? Like, again, like very similar to where I was with like Dak Prescott debate, when you think about Tua on the rookie deal with Tyreek Hill in his prime, Jalen Waddle on the rookie deal. If you cannot win with these guys when you are not getting paid prime money, and especially like in case of Tyreek, some of his cap hits were also pushed down the line, when are you going to win? Like, when we are not paying you 10 million but 50, when Tyreek's cap hit is not 20 million but 50 million, when he's post his prime, unlike in his prime. You know, like, I know it might sound like cold from me, but yeah, we are trying to really look at this from the perspective of GM, and I feel like as a GM, these are the questions that I need to ask myself. And truth to be told, I think the answers are not those that the Dolphins fans would like to hear. So that's the offense. Now let's switch towards defensive side. We start with this edge room, and there is one of my favorite players in the league, and that's Calais Campbell. Like, what a specimen this guy is. Like, similar to Demario Davis. Like, they, based on age, those guys have no business to be as good as they are, but they keep on doing this. Just like my cat keeps on, being a nuisance this day. But Calais Campbell, I would say he's still like top 5 run defending edge in the league, which is insane. And it's not like he is this like push around in terms of pass rush as well. So huge kudos for them to picking him up. Huge kudos to him for playing as good as he did. And what is insane with him is he was playing for $2 million on this year, which is freaking insane. Like, this dude is going to be 39 entering the next year, and I'm like, I mean, bring this guy, pay him 1 year, 8-9 millions towards any team, and I feel like you are not making a mistake. We already talked about Job Robinson really taking league by the storm, especially in second, or like mostly in second part of the year. And Jalen Phillips, unfortunately, struggling to stay healthy in a year that, like, he could have made his presence felt. Bradley Chubb not being out there, and it was his 4th year of a rookie deal, so his future is going to heavily depend on this year. I don't expect them to pay him before the season starts with him coming back of injury, and it's going to be interesting to see where he's at in terms of his health and his production in 2025, because unfortunately, health is a huge part of this industry. Beside these guys, you had some contributors, Emmanuel Ogba being the guy that played most of the snaps. He was really solid in terms of run defense, but not necessarily a guy who built this room around, but a solid veteran signing that absolutely did what you asked him to do. In terms of interior, they went on and brought Zach Seiler into this room before the season started. And when we talked about Jonnu Smith being great pickup, Calais Campbell being great pickup, Zach Seiler was in another 3 years, 30 millions. That seems like a bargain for the quality of player he is. And they were like, yeah, we Perhaps not necessarily in terms of offensive line, but at least in terms of D-line, we need to beef up. And Zach Sealer definitely provided that. Even career high in sacks, and he was a huge presence. And like he is 30, and I don't expect him to decline like just yet. So he could be a very nice value pick for them for several years to come, or like 2 years that he is signed for. And that really like brought me back towards where I struggle with where the Dolphins are at, because the management did really nice things in terms of free agency, like Calais Campbell, Zach Seiler, really nice pickups. John Smith, like there were really nice contributors on super cheap and insane value deals as compared to their production. And yet this team did not make playoffs. This team was struggled to necessarily find the identity. And it was not necessarily about like Tua being out. Like he was out for several games, but I don't really feel like things change. Maybe they snag into playoffs and they are still one and done. So, when you are actually able to snatch up a lot of value on free agent market and still not really looking like a threat at all, what's the upside of this thing? Another player that kind of stood up and was better than I at least expected was Jordan Brooks. He did not necessarily return value that Seahawks, my team, invested in him, because he was drafted in the first round, and he kind of never emerged as like anywhere close to really great linebacker. But this position takes a while, and it seems like Jordan Brooks might career just might getting started in terms of his top football. And unfortunately for Seahawks, this is the guy that did not return our value, but might do that for the Dolphins, because I don't think that good starter is where you max out on him. Tyrell Dodson, he was a player that had really nice what is going on? Yeah. That had really nice campaign in 2023 for Buffalo, where on limited snaps he was like tearing charts apart, and Miami took a chance on him and gave him the full load of linebacker snaps, and once again, for $4 million, getting this really nice pickup. Like just again, like team for Miami was like they've lost a lot of players like Christian Wilkins, Robert Hunt, to name the two most significant guys that definitely were missing. But the GM definitely did a nice job on the market to find guys and bring them here. Unfortunately, with Dodson, they don't have him signed for next year, and he's probably going to cost a little bit more. Overall, this defense was definitely not bad, despite both like their top edges in Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips being pretty much out for the whole season, and yet another top player that they have in Javon Holland having his worst year of his career. Unfortunately for him, it came in his contract year, so it's never what you want to see. As like a player's agent, like he was, oh god, like I want Javon to get paid. What's going on? Because he was just about did not make first round, so you didn't have a 50-year option. Otherwise, he would be back. Right now, he is a pending free agent, and we will see if they are able to bring him back, because this year might make him cheaper on the market, but he is still an insane player. And with the cap hit for the Dolphins not necessarily being in a good position, they only have 9 million free in terms of cap money, despite cap went significantly up. Do you really want to spend over that for a safety? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. And specifically, like, you only have 9.5 millions in free cap, and that's when Tua's cap hit is only 39 million. That's not close to his average cap hit that he's going to have much higher in next year's. Tyreek's is only 28 million, next year is 51. So I do struggle to see them bringing Javon Holland back, which is going to be a huge loss, but they are kind of used to it with Robert Hunt, Christian Wilkins, and, you know, like, they are kind of one of the very few franchises that it seems like continuously are going to lose excellent players that they drafted. Jordan Poyer was brought here from the Buffalo. It's kind of a vet signing, and I would say he did his thing. He was not not his prime self by any stretch of imagination, but he was far from being a problem in my opinion, and he managed to stay healthy, which was very, very big for him. Unfortunately, his coverage is just not there. His hips are not where they were when he was younger, and like, you need to really try to cover this weakness of him, because it can get exposed quite heavily. In terms of what this team had in the rest of the secondary, obviously Jalen Ramsey still being number one corner, one of the best guys in the league. He's not the best anymore. I don't think he is in the conversation anymore, but top 10, yeah, I still feel like Jalen Ramsey is there. He stayed healthy for the whole year, which, like last year, he was struggling with unfortunate injury. And you definitely are happy to have Jalen as your number one, though his contract, yet again, is very costly and is going to get costly in terms of cap hits in years to come. So, unfortunately, this team is, I feel like, past of their window, where Tua was on rookie deal and some of the top guys were on small cap hits that they will have in future years. And it's like, how are you going to manage those situations when those cap hits are starting to hit more and more, when you could not make anything significant happen when they didn't. Kendall Fuller, I was kind of shocked that they released him, because again, they only saved $3 million by letting him go, and important starter might be a stretch. I will rewatch a tape on him, but my initial thoughts when I watched my play was like, well, again, it's probably not his best year, or it's obviously not his best year, but it's like, I don't see him as a problem. And when you look at the contract that he signed with Dolphins, it was 2 years, 15 million. So he was for a cap hit of 8.3 million for 2025 with 4 million in void years. So it's like essentially a cap hit of 20 to 12 millions, and you are saving around 7 from that, in years to come. So it's like 3 million this year and 4 million next year. I don't necessarily see that super value to let him go. So this cuts of veterans might be signaling that Dolphins are ready to kind of admit a defeat on this wave of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Bradley Chubb, this type of players that were brought here to win championships, kind of perhaps admitting defeat on this, this didn't work, we need to semi-rebuild. But again, it's harder, I think, to rebuild when you have quality quarterback, and I'm not sure how much of a value you can still get for those guys, because the cap hits on Ramsey, Hill are going to be really big. So tough transition, tough thing to manage, and I really do expect them to be talked about in the very similar position next year. When between 11 to 20, I do expect Miami to be in road to Super Bowl 2026 number for them. Backup of the secondary is Kader Coho, very nice slot corner that only things that he like struggles with is like he is really good being where he needs to be, but he needs to like work on his technique and work on his perhaps even like muscles to really be able to bring the guys down because he struggles with that. But for a new DFA pickup, they will have him for 1 more year for cheap, and after that, I really feel like he's playing like a guy that's going to get paid 7-8 millions a year and absolutely deserve it. In terms of rest of these guys, Storm Duck was kind of the best of the bunch, but it doesn't necessarily say much when you look at the competition. So that's the roster rundown being done, and like I said, guys, and I kind of tried to warn you, every Dolphins fans that's watching this is not a fun conversation. Like, I hate to tear the guys down, so perhaps I try to balance it where I really see someone being great, whether it's for his value or like overall, and kind of, I wouldn't say like exaggerated that, but like I really enjoy to talk positive, whether it's Calais Campbell or John Smith and guys like that. But it's still true that this team, yeah, I struggle to see happy ending for the Dolphins in the near future. With that being said, let's hand out some rewards. Draft hit. It has to be Chubb Robinson. I will say that he is the only guy that was a significant contributor from this draft. Absolutely true. Was really out there with the best of rookie defensive players in second part of the year. And he's one of those players where sky is actually the limit. If he continues to work as hard as it seems like he's working and develop his pass rushing moves, he might be one of the best pass rushers in the league. The question is, will run defense come along? I don't really think so. I don't think he's going to be asked to do that much of it. So, like, amazing starter because he's not going to be that overall monster. Might be his ceiling, but still really a really nice pickup. In terms of draft blunder, unfortunately I have to go with the second pick that they've made in Patrick Paul. Like I said, I'm not like that much worried because he didn't perform. It was always going to be a bit of a project, but like he really looked bad. And it's hard to call a man a project tackle, like still development tackle when he is 24. Like if he was 20, okay, and I understand the need, but you know what I mean. In terms of cornerstone of this franchise, I have to give it to Devon Achane, and he should really have amazing starter here. I used the wrong card for him. I'm sorry, Devon. You are an amazing starter in my eyes. Really entering the conversation about top 10 running backs in the league, which is kind of crazy because like he's really, really good. But like you have to realize Bijan is there, James Conner is there, Jahmyr Gibbs is there, Saquon is there, Derrick Henry is there, Josh Jacobs is there. Like there is a lot of really, really nice running backs, and they start to matter more and more. And I do expect, perhaps like 2 or 3 guys next year also attacking 2,000 yards combined. Once again, because teams are really bringing run game and use for these guys back. And if like Devon H and Jahmyr Gibbs are just showing that you don't have to be a huge specimen of a man to be super fucking tough to tackle, because when you are super speedy, like timing of your tackle is going to be super hard. So they are really tough to bring down despite their like smaller frame. Sorry, Devon, you deserve an amazing starter here. My mistake. You have it on every other card, I hope, but this one I used a wrong one. Sorry for that. In terms of unsung hero, I thought about Calais Campbell, but I was like, oh god, you are giving it to your favorite. So I ended up really giving it to John Smith, who equally I feel like deserves it, because the thing was, with Tyreek and Jalen not being their special selves, they needed that third piece that essentially Dolphins offenses did not necessarily like require. It was like Tyreek and Jalen is going to make that happen, plus running backs. This year they needed a third pass catcher from tight end or wide receiver, and Jonas Smith emerges as at that. Like, he had more touchdowns, by the way, than Tyreek and Jalen Waddle combined. Like, not that this is necessarily like what like super matters, but it's just kind of a fun fact to mention. And in terms of flop of the year, I know it sounds harsh, but I have to go for Tyreek. And to me, this is much more about the, like, I don't think I would give it to him if the scenes from the last game did not happen, because I was just comparing him to, for example, George Kittle, where it's like the year was shit, a lot of guys got injured, but on one side you have George Kittle fighting every goddamn ball, playing hard, and on the other side Tyreek, in a game that the playoff is still theoretically there, refuses to play in fourth quarter, and pretty much game is almost not even over, and you are like, yeah, I'm out. Consider this plus all of the like things that are probably happening slightly because of him not necessarily being a great example for guys in terms of being late to meetings and stuff like that. When a lot of people are calling Miami soft, and it's kind of like, yeah, they are a Palm Beach team that can play in good weather, but when the conditions go hard, they kind of disappear. If this is the mentality that your main guys are having, like, rules not abide to us, it's not surprising, and it's not only about lacking the sheer mass to be able to like play better in tough conditions, but it's also like about habits, in my opinion. So that's where Tyreek unfortunately becomes a flop for me. Though I feel like still he's an elite player, I was not stripping him of this grade. With that being said, let's look at where this franchise is at, what I think about their coach, etc. So Mike McDaniel, I think he's still an A coach, though this was probably the most disappointing year from him, in my opinion, because I didn't necessarily see that much creative stuff that we are kind of getting for granted for him. And is it to us limitation? Is it internal stuff, or like Tyreek's not being Tyreek anymore? I'm not sure, but it was not as pretty as I would hope for. In terms of 2024, like, it couldn't be better than D. I was thinking about even lowering it, but what at least goes towards them is like, well, they were still in playoff contention coming week 18, despite Tua missing some games. So in terms of performance on the field, it was not bad. Defense looked good, Chop Robinson looked good. Like, there were some positives, so I cannot be like super negative about this year. But I feel like this might just be conversation for years to come. Like, they will oscillate between B and D because, well, they kind of perform based on expectations. Whether the draft was good or bad, that's where grades will change. Some individual performances that will change, but it's like they are probably going to get stuck even in this, because here I compare the season comparing to my expectations, and they didn't disappoint me necessarily, or hugely. But it also says I don't really have too much expectations for them. In terms of QB, I'm viewing the situation as even worse than as unfortunately one of the worst out there, because you are paying top dollar money for a guy that, I think his ceiling is top 7, top 8, and his lows are top 18, top 20, last couple of years. Unfortunately, I think we've seen his lows this year, and that would be 1- for me. But I just have to accompany chance that, his injury, his health. I literally, if he goes out to the press and do Andrew Luck and says I'm done, I will be happy, and not in any mean way, not Miami or I was right. It would be I'm just happy that this young man is going to perhaps sacrifice part of his career to stay healthy. Because, I mean, don't tell me, guys, that when you see Tua sliding, when you see Tua running, are you guys cool? Like, I'm not. I don't want to see any more hits to him happening. And I'm like shocked that he isn't required to play with some special protection. Because like, how many concussions does that require that guys need to wear some sort of protection above the helmet? I don't know. With that being said, hot seat for Mike McDaniel. I think it's not small. I feel like he was. I wouldn't say he was necessarily hired to win Super Bowl, though. Like, it's always a dream that you can do it, but like the really high praises for him went slightly cold for this year, and you know, it's not only Tua, but it's also like Mike McDaniel. Like, the window for Miami was 2023, 2022. They were great years that they could really use towards their advantage, with prime guys being in their primes and cap hits being pushed down the line. And if they repeat yet another season like this, which I think they are destined to do, I really don't see them being better than 10-7. You know, is it going to be enough for him to like keep his seat? And also, like, is he actually that interested in this job? Because I mean, I really don't see too much light at the end of this tunnel for years to come. In terms of finances, this is low-key not good situation. Not necessarily that you would have a ton of dead cap being pushed down the line, but it's the other thing, and it's okay, it's not dead cap, meaning like you are not paying guys that are no longer on the roster, but it's like, okay, if a guy signs 4-year, $100 million contract, you can play with when the cap hit. And what they essentially has done is like, let's imagine we are halfway through the contract, and the first 2 years the cap hit was 12.5 million for the guy, and now it's 37.5. So they really pushed when the cap hits are going to hit towards 2026, 2027. And even with that, even right now, they have 10 millions only to spend. You know, so this is pretty much like you have money to spend on draft. You already have 30 millions in that cap hit, and your future in terms of money looks like you have only an additional 20 millions for 2026, because Tua cap hit 56 million, Tyreek 52, Chubb 29, Ramsey 25. And for 2027, it gets better, but it's still Waddle 44, Tua 54, Bradley 30, Jalen Ramsey 27. And you no longer have Tyreek on the roster, you no longer have Armstead on the roster, etc., etc. Like, even 2027, you have 130 million in cap space for that year, but you only have 10 players under contract for that situation. So the finances are really not great. They're saying it's the weather, man. Like, it's actually the weather. Like, you don't freaking want to play at Miami, especially like before Halloween. Like, the hot is just freaking insane. So that's like really their the big strength, and they are the team that like overall have the biggest, or one of the biggest, home advantage across the whole NFL. In terms of division, I ended up graded this as neutral, because in Bills you have a juggernaut, you have a really great team, but Patriots are still in like where we at. They probably have their franchise QB in Drake May. I absolutely believe that, but it will still require a lot of good movement on free agent market towards them being like playoff contenders. And Jets, only God knows what the Jets are. So like, you know, you could call this a plus, but I feel like Patriots are going to figure it out. And with Jets, like, even though it was really bad this year, there is still a lot of great pieces that they can turn this thing around. So that was that. Now let's check how this roster could shape up for 2025. So with the O-line, some of the things are clear in terms of O-line. That's Darren Armstead. He is going to be the left tackle, and you hope that he's going to stay healthy. In terms of right tackle, with him escaping the first wave of cuts that Dolphins have made, I do not feel like they will get rid of Austin Jackson, so I do expect him to start. And Aaron Brewer is definitely a man for the job. But in terms of guards, they need to invest there. You know, whether it's through free agency, whether it's through the draft, they really don't have anyone that is close to being playable there. In terms of QB, it's clearly Tua. Well, now let's look at the playmakers. I went with the approach that they will continue with Tyreek on the roster, though I'm like far away from 100% sure, though they are reassuring voices that they were able to figure it out. What Tyreek said, well, we will see. But like, they are clearly great top heavy. If this 4 is your top 4, you are absolutely whistling. Devon, like, you should have amazing star here. I'm sorry for that, man. But Tyreek, Jalen, Devon, and Jonas Smith, that's a 4 that pretty much every team in the league would love to have. Behind that, I'm not sure what they will go with, whether they will like invest in another running back, which I think they should in terms of draft. But maybe they really like Jalen Wright. We will see. We will see where this goes. I definitely have like no clear names that I feel like wide receiver 3 or tight end 2 that's going to be involved, a lot of 12 personnel, or running back 2 that's going to split carries with A-Chain. Neither of these guys are necessarily on my radar for this team. In terms of backups, like, I think Malik Washington and Patrick Paul are the only clear ones. With Jalen Wright, he probably should have been here. I originally had Mostert here, so it was like, okay, cutting the Mostert, yeah, it's probably with Jalen Wright being the case, but like, are you certain? Like, he was not as great of a prospect that you cannot say, okay, like, this is a great running back class, let's draft him running back. So I'm not like super certain that he is even backup at this point. Though with Mostert being gone, I think it looks towards this direction. Huntley would be a nice backup to have, but again, with the money being the way they are, they might even think about drafting a QB in the 4th, 5th round this year, where, well, 1, maybe, you know, you can find your Brock Purdy, but 2, it's a way of having a cheap backup, right? And there are some like solid quarterbacks in the later rounds. So this draft class is not necessarily top heavy in terms of QBs, but there is a nice depth. So I do expect them to try to fish in there. In terms of D-line, I think this is one of those that could be set up. Will they bring Calais Campbell back? Will they be will they be able to afford it? What's going to be with Jalen Phillips? What's going to be with Bradley Chubb? Like, they have several question marks in terms of health, but I kind of do expect that this could be how they shape up. Jordan Brooks, clearly a linebacker that they like, and he repaid the love very well. In terms of secondary, Jalen Ramsey is their 1. Who is their 2 and who is their 3 with Kendall Fuller? I have no idea. I kind of do expect Storm Duck to get involved more, because I feel like they liked what they had in him. And of course, I'm sorry, there should have been Kader Coho here, because he, like, am I not let me recheck on this one, because I might have made a boo-boo. Yeah, Kader Coho is restricted free agent, so he definitely has one of these spots. So the only question, I think, is safety, whether they will bring Javon Holland back, whether they can afford it, and obviously the second one to him, and another wide corner. So low-key, a lot of questions on their hands. Backups, with Bradley Chubb, like, I couldn't justify to myself to putting him in the starting caliber players because I have no idea what his health situation is. Like, is he done? Probably not. You hope not, but I just don't know. So like, I just put him here. These are his stats from 2023. He was exceptional player, so we just hope that he is going to be able to continue his career. Mo Camara, like, he didn't even play that much, so these are not his stats. This is how I graded him. And Cam Smith, like, low-key, they don't have that much of depth and just again, like, when you just look at this roster, like, look at the holes. And how are you going to fix this with 10 millions and your best pick being 13 overall? So you need 2 guards. Like, there is no way around that. Okay, perhaps with this 4, you don't necessarily have to invest in this room at all. Okay, but you don't really have depth in terms of in terms of tight ends, in terms of QB, in terms of running back, in terms of offensive line. The only part of your roster where you feel like you are set up is the defensive line. But even there, like, okay, Calais Campbell might not be back. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, what is their health situation? So you only have certainty on Sealer and Robinson. And in terms of secondary, like, Javon Holland doesn't necessarily have to be back. I do expect that they might franchise tag him if the push comes to shove, but then I would expect them to franchise and trade him. And it's like, okay, it's Jalen Ramsey, it's Caden Coho that I'm missing. I'm sorry for that, but Caden Coho definitely belongs here. And the rest is a question mark. So there are so many holes. You have 10 millions to figure them out. And, it's not like you have prime draft picks. Like, you have, some extra 4th, extra 5th, extra to 7th. But yeah, how valuable are they? Like, not very, very much. So, unfortunately, a year from my take, Miami are not in a good spot. So, bet number 13 came to Miami. They kind of are almost like worth that unlucky number. And it was not a huge joy talking about the team that I really view is facing a lot of problems. And, if they are able to figure them out and prove me wrong, more power to them. Like, this will always be, like, unless there are particular players that I will be like, or particular situations that I'm like, okay, I kind of wish you to do bad, but it's going to be 0.0% of the time. And like, I do wish nothing bad to Miami. I'm just really struggling to see how they will figure this out to be a championship contender in years to come. I don't see that. Thank you very much for listening. I hope I will be more positive with the next team. You will have to see for yourself with number 13. Until then, have a nice day and see you. Bye.